We're going to be talking today about the VMS and AI workflow for your business. So basically how to accelerate your candidate submissions like never before. We're going to start with some quick intros. I'm Leanne Perez. I'm the Sales and Strategy Specialist for VMS here at Bullhorn. And before my time at Bullhorn, I was actually a Bullhorn customer for a little under 10 years, mainly in the healthcare space. I was responsible for managing tech stack, but I actually got into staffing and started in the VMS MSP partnership side of the world. So very familiar with this workflow and use case. And today with me, I have Weston Wright, our solution consultant. So Weston, if you wanted to give yourself a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. So, yeah, solution consultant with Bullhorn, which essentially means running demonstration today, a little bit more on the technical side of the product, not just the VMS, but also the automation and AI, some of which we'll be talking about today as well. And yeah, despite my Australian accent, I am based in the UK myself. So yeah, so no, it's not midnight for me or anything like that. However, I did worked a couple of years in Bullhorn in the APAC team, and now going on a year and a half or so in the UK team over here. But yeah, again, thanks everyone for joining the call, and hopefully you'll find this quite interesting. And obviously, as we get into more and more about AI in the future, I'm sure you'll see more and more of this sort of stuff. So yeah, hopefully it'll be interesting for you.
Cool. All right, so really quick, we're just going to cover today's agenda. I'm going to start covering the AI and VMS landscape. Then I'll cover what that workflow really looks like for your VMS business and how you can use VMS automation and AI to accelerate your recruitment workflow. And then, of course, Weston is going to take us through the demonstration where you'll get to see all of it in action, all the fun stuff. And then we'll end with a quick Q&A. And then you guys will be about your day. All right, so we wanted to start here and really just highlight the VMS and MSP global landscape and really just show the opportunity that's still consistent here with VMS and MSP partnerships. So obviously globally, slight decline, but the really big call out and highlight here is the continued increase in growth in EMEA and APAC, which overall just highlights and stresses the real growth opportunity in your MSP and VMS partnerships with your clients, whether they be mid-market, enterprise, all of those. So really cool survey here. If you guys haven't taken a deeper look at it, definitely recommend you visit that at SIA and get all the details. So now we're going to jump into the automated VMS workflow. Give me 1 second. So for those of you that aren't familiar with VMS Sync and how our automation tool works, VMS Sync basically just helps you increase your requisition visibility. So in today's world, if you don't have VMS Sync automation, you probably have a lot of login management, a little bit of swivel chair play within your teams, and a lot of emails and lost opportunity with recs that might not be getting worked on because there's just no visibility across your organization. So the way VMS Sync works is we're going to take that job from the VMS and bring it into your Bullhorn platform, already contextualized and normalized. So as the recs are being released and open in your VMS tool, you can see on the screen, we have a little image of what field glass recs would look like. It's capturing all of that data and creating the record in the Bullhorn ATS for you. Not only that, it's continually updating as there's updates being released in the VMS. So no more needing to go check into the VMS. If your job is still open or has been moved to hold, you get all of those updates in real time as they're happening in the VMS in the Bullhorn platform. So again, keeping your team, both recruitment, account management, whichever it may be, nice and familiarized within the Bullhorn platform. And like I mentioned, we do normalize and contextualize the jobs. Obviously, working with VMSs, you guys know sometimes the program office doesn't always do the best job. Naming the requisition or the position might not make sense with the actual details of the job. So we do contextualize and normalize all of the data being parsed from the VMS so that it makes sense for your team and they're just ready to go and ready to get working on it and get you guys some candidates to send back. You can also take advantage of mapping. So what this means is as the data coming from the VMS, if it makes sense to match any of those VMS fields to your ATS fields, we'll automatically parse that information into the specific fields that you've decided to map that make sense for your business workflow. You can also take advantage of rules and apply any business rules or routing logic. So if you have specific end clients that go to specific teams or specific facilities or locations that need to be routed specifically, or points of data that need to go into certain points of data, you can use rules logic to apply all of that so that it really fits and is tailored to your specific business workflow and not so much having to conform to what the VMS is delivering to you. And lastly, we do have submittals functionality. So currently we have 4 main submittals integrations. That would be Fieldglass, Beeline, Health Trust Workforce Solutions, and Pixid VMS. So what this means is we allow you to submit your candidate, so that client submission, that send out, all within Bullhorn back into the VMS without the recruitment or account management team needing to leave Bullhorn to complete that submission. And then similar, like our job syncing and continual updates, we do the same thing with submittals, where as there's updates and that candidate is moving through the pipeline in the VMS, those updates are syncing back into your Bullhorn ATS, where then you can leverage all sorts of automations or notifications to your team to keep them informed of where the candidate is in the process. So next, I'm actually going to highlight 2 new submittals features that we've just recently released. They're super new. So if you haven't heard about them yet, don't feel like you've missed out because, like I said, fresh off the press. So the first one we're going to cover is auto-populate based on last submission. Now, this request actually came from our customer base. As you know, working these jobs, you probably have those candidates that you continually resubmit and resubmit either to the same type of job coming from the same program or to, a different client, but still same qualifications. So in an effort to reduce that repetitive data entry or, typos and speed up the submission process for things that your team has already done, we have created an auto-populate based on last submission. So what this does is when the account manager or the recruiter goes in to submit that candidate that's been previously submitted, it will give you an alert saying, hey, we actually found a previous submission to auto-populate the form from, and you can choose to still start from scratch if it's obviously not relevant, or create that new client submission based on your last submission so that that submission form is as close to 100% completed already, and you're not wasting your efforts copying and pasting all of the same data that you might have submitted a few days ago or a few hours ago. So very cool. Secondly, we now have the ability to take advantage of enhanced submittal mapping. This is probably my most excited feature because when I was a customer, I know I wished for something like this. So very cool that you guys have it now. But so with submittal mapping, again, all about reducing the manual work, reducing the need to copy and paste from whether it be candidate record or job record into that submission form. And again, end goal is as close to 100% completion of that submission form to accelerate clicking submit so that that submission gets to the program, to the VMS that much faster. So the way it works, and Weston will show you guys in the demonstration, what this looks like is you're going to take your ATS entity, the data point, so whatever field makes sense, and map it to the field that it matches to in the client submission form. So if you guys have done a lot of work customizing your Bullhorn environment to sort of support your VMS submittals, now you can map those fields over and actually get some increased efficiencies here and not need to copy and paste or have the recruiter searching for the data that is already existing in your ATS. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about AI. So, as everyone knows, AI, big topic. If you don't know about it, you really should. So, when it comes to AI and the talent experience and sort of that human experience, the element of the recruiter and the agents that Weston will be talking about in a little bit, talent expectations have really shifted. And they're more welcoming of an AI experience. And when we actually surveyed our candidates, 57% of candidates did say that they want to receive communications from their recruiters once a week. They still crave that human connection. They still want that personalized touch and experience. The cool thing about it is that 79% of those candidates did say that they would be willing to work with AI so long as it keeps that personal touch and that high touch level of communication and still continuing to accelerate their process. So if it's going to lag the process, they definitely don't care to be involved. But as we know, anytime AI is involved, it's only going to accelerate and speed up their experience. And then again, 90% of candidates said, as long as communication frequency is there, their loyalty will also be there, and they will likely work with the agency again if that communication is there. So what AI can do to help support this human experience is really help start sort of leveling out that old tech approach, helping recruiters with the burnout, and helping to support and facilitate and accelerate those experiences of the candidate as they're going through their recruitment experience. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So as we're entering this new era of technology, what are sort of the possibilities that AI is offering, not only in terms of increasing the reliance on technology in order to be competitive, but also helping us get rid of sort of that old world mentality of digitizing manual processes, having these multiple technologies to solve single point use cases, which obviously to the firm, to you guys as an agency, it can be extremely costly. So with Bullhorn AI, we're able to unlock new levels of efficiency, able to deliver that human experience still giving the recruiter or the account management team that level of control that is needed or wanted. And Weston, again, will show you guys that in the demonstration, but also allowing you to have a single point of reference when it comes to your technology, which is going to help with better adoption, better spreading of tech across the organization, because your team's not going to have all these multiple point solutions that they need to work with in order to get the results that they're looking for. Okay. So something that we're going to be covering today that you'll obviously see in the demo is two of the main points of how we are infusing AI into not only the Bullhorn platform, but into our recruitment workflow, especially as it applies to our VMS workflow within Bullhorn as well. So we have our AI assistants and our AI agents. If you guys haven't heard, we are actually in the third wave of AI, known as agentic AI. And what this means is this allows AI systems, now they can independently perform tasks, and they can even help make decisions because they're learning from the environment that they're in. So it helps reason with tasks and adapt changing context. So you'll see that as Weston is going through his demonstration, how we are using the AI assistant to learn from all of the data that already exists within the records that we're working with. So we'll be highlighting our AI assistant, which again is going to help the recruiters complete those tasks more efficiently. And then our AI screening agent, which is going to help the screening process workflow work independently without much need or involvement or waste of time on the recruiter's end. So let's talk about what the Bullhorn AI combined with VMS automation workflow looks like. So the job comes in from the VMS. You're getting it from the client, right? And we're using VMS automation to do that. Think back to the workflow I just talked about. The job's coming in, we're contextualizing it, we're getting it ready. Your team can go ahead, start working on it, right? However, now with AI, we can take that job, automatically enrich it, get it ready for publishing, and then AI search and match will automatically match the top candidates within your database and build an automatic search for your team to also use if they choose to do a more manual approach in their searching efforts. After that, AI can then also take the candidates that have been identified as those top candidates, reach out to them, send a hyper-personalized message. Are you interested in this job? Great, let's get you screened. So then we can get you over to the recruiter if you qualify. So then that AI screening agent, of course, is going to screen the candidate, give them a score, and if, depending on the parameters that you set in place, if they pass, then they're positioned to book time with the recruiter. So again, speeding up that whole recruitment workflow so that the recruiters are focusing on top level tier candidates, and then really then submitting those best candidates that have been matched back into the VMS using VMS submittals. So covered quite a bit. Now Weston is actually gonna take the reins and he'll show you all of these steps and how you can take advantage of it for your VMS workflow. So I'll stop sharing, Weston, and you can dive in.
Fantastic. Thanks, Leanne. Appreciate that. So we'll jump through the platform itself, kind of like that roadmap that Leanne just mentioned there. She just went through. So firstly, though, I'll start on a VMS, for example. So I'll share my screen here, and you'll see. For instance, I'm just in Beeline in this example. We've got the request that's come through, right? So in this case, it's a business systems analyst, but of course it could be any particular request in your sector. Now, with the VMS sync side of things, we'll start with that first, and then we'll get into a little bit more AI as we go. The VMS sync side, that's going to naturally pull that role into Bullhorn. You can do things like it's going to email you with a few details about the role itself, and if you come down, you can click to view the order as well, and then that can jump into Bullhorn itself and go onto the actual job record. Now, again, I just did that very quickly, but essentially that is the crux of the sync part of the VMS coming in, as Leanne mentioned. Plenty of little benefits going on in the background here that aren't really visual, like all your roles coming in. It's full transparency on what's in there. There's normalization, as she mentioned, mapping to the ATS fields, and you're applying business and routing logic as well. So there's a fair bit that's happening in the background of this purely for the VMS sync side of things. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you can report on these sort of items. They come through as a VMS role. So you have things like analytics, for instance, you can then specify down on how we're going for VMS specifically. Cool. You'll see on screen, though, there is an element here on the job that you probably haven't seen before. We'll get to that in just a moment. The first element I want to show, actually, if we go into the layout tab here and we go into AI assistant piece, and maybe I'll just pop her over here. So when we're thinking about what can we do to just help us out a little bit day to day, save a bit of time, and where can we push AI to make this happen? A lot of the time we might think of generative AI. So that is maybe summarizing something. For example, in this case, you could immediately enrich the job by saying, create a public job description to this using the job title, the internal description. Great. And let's just generate that. And essentially, this can give us a public facing or a job description that we might want to publish. Of course, we might want to tweak this a little bit first and have a quick proofread, but essentially, yeah, you can grab this and maybe this goes onto the website. One thing I'll mention, though, is now with the agents automation that we have, if you're using agents automation, this sort of stuff can actually even be automatic. So AI in itself is summarizing a lot, and it's basically doing a lot of automation there, right? But actually making it take this job, when the job first comes in, the job is VMS, cool, summarize this job description, make a public job description, publish it. That sort of thing now with agents automation can be done automatically, which I think is pretty cool. Now, from there, of course, that's just one element of it. But realistically, we also want to be looking for candidates who are going to be relevant for the role, right? So the other card here that you may not have seen before, this is now a newer AI search and match card, which we have. And essentially, it's of course going to be looking for particular candidates which might be suitable. So we can see here, we have some candidates that are really good score to fit with these three at the top. Looks like James Anderson, after retiring from cricket, he's now a business systems analyst. So there you go. If we go to show all of the candidates, you can actually now pull this up into a newer list view experience. So still pretty similar, probably, to the list view that you already know from previously. But of course, there's a few points of difference in here. We have this relevancy score, which we've just spoken about. But a key part, if I go into the edit search up in this section here, it's actually auto-built some of these elements from the job already for me. And what does that mean? Auto-build, what's it actually giving me? Well, it's giving me different phrases, and call this an ontology library, based off the back of, in this example, based on the back of that job title of business analyst. And we can see in here, okay, there might be different phrases depending on basically what could someone put in their CV. So they might not put business analyst, they might put business systems, they might put something else in here. But if you go in here and you go, actually, that's kind of a relevant test, actually QA is kind of irrelevant, you can close these off and you can still put a bit of human element on here. The point, again, is the AI gives you that little first port of call, gives you the push. What does it think is going to be relevant? And then you can, as a human, you can still interpret that and play around with it. You can still, of course, though, add additional fields in here. So it's going to pull through the location, but just like the standard candidate list view search that you already know, you can still come in here and specify down. So maybe, skills, maybe custom fields that you have, perhaps, specify on notes, has this person or these people been pre-screened in the last 6 months? So you can still do this kind of thing as well, no problem. Same thing with the columns as well, the column layout, you can set that up. You can still save this list view search. So a lot of commonalities there. But one thing that would be different is if you were to utilize some job boards, you can also look at job boards externally from this section as well, which not a huge focus of this little demonstration with VMS, but suffice to say that is also possible from here. Great. So from this point, I might select multiple of these people, let's say the top 5 who were relevant. Great, we're going to trust AI on this one. Cool. I'm going to go over to the 5 selected. Let's add them to the shortlist for the role. Cool. So I'll pop in the ID of the role that I want. In this case, the business systems analyst. Got these 5. And now this is an important piece here because we can say at what shortlist level are these people going to be at? And depending on how far you want to take AI and automation, these are some of the things that we can do today. So I could just shortlist them and then that's fine, that's cool. And that could then send them with automation. You could send them maybe then a new job match alert. Hey, to one of these people, Paul, that I just popped in the shortlist. We think you might be a good match for this role. Maybe get them to click through. Perhaps they fill out some sort of basic chatbot, even things like, hey, do you have right to work in this particular country? Those sort of questions. So maybe you want to do something like that, and you can use automation to that extent today. But coming back into the shortlist, you might also want to ask them to start to complete a screening. And this is another area of the agent's automation, which Bullhorn, which we have, and it's about the actual AI now going through and screening these individuals. The purpose here really, again, it's that first port of call, it's that first thing that gives a lot of these individuals the ability to kind of screen themselves almost. Maybe if someone has a poorly written CV, but they're actually a really good fit for the job, you might not have had the time to spend on those sorts of people initially because you might not believe their CV, but when it comes to actually screening, perhaps they turn out to be quite a candidate at the end of the day. So I'll show you what that looks like in a sec, but essentially you could just go straight to invite these people to a screening and save that onwards if you wanted to. Screening questions themselves, though, what these are, if I jump back into the job quickly before we get to that screening agent, you notice there can be another tab up here, screening questions. Now, this is yet another element that we can utilize AI for. If you want to, you can come in here, we can go add screening question. You can start writing whatever you want out, selecting whatever you need. But essentially, I can close this off and look, if I refresh this, it takes about a minute, and then AI can actually start to pop together some screening questions for me as well. So whether you want to pop these in yourself or you want to just trust the screening agent to start to pop these together, you can do so. What does that actually look like though? Well, from a candidate's perspective, they can receive similar sort of email, right? But in this time, they're going, hey, we think you're a good fit for the role, or thanks for applying, or however they've got to this way in terms of your roadmap of how you set this up. We think that you'd like to take a screening conversation with a conversational bot, basically, or however you'd like to frame that. And what does this look like? Well, from the candidate's perspective, looks like something like this. So this is the screening agent in here. This is the reminder of the job description. And then are we ready to start? Yep, I agree. And off we go. So now the agent's going to ask us a few questions for this role based on the screening questions, which, as mentioned, that could even be created by AI. And this whole process doesn't necessarily have to have much human interaction at all.
So taking this back to the VMS workflow, think about all of your jobs that you're getting through the VMS, whether they be those high volume orders, those low tier, low margin orders that you probably don't want your recruiters wasting their best efforts on. Using the power of AI to let them screen the already available candidates that you probably have shortlisted or
Yes.
submitted on former orders before, take advantage and take control of screening those candidates for you and identifying who qualifies to either talk with your recruiter or even just be submitted back to the VMS is a really huge time saver. So again, accelerating and speeding up that process for submission. And I love that use case, especially for those high volume orders that you just get all the time, right? Because you work them every year, every quarter, it's the same job order, right? So letting AI take care of that so your recruiters can focus on those harder to fill niche roles that might need a higher level of touch or care because of the type of candidate that they require. So, oh, there's Alice.
Yeah. She's got sick of me not answering the question a little bit there. But you can see, because I said yes once and I didn't say anything, it's starting to respond to what I'm doing. And as I'm talking right now, this is apparently my response to this particular question. And I can say done talking. That's going to take what I've just said. And obviously Alice is now going to continue on and continue asking me questions about this particular role. Great. So what happens from here, though, if I get through this process, and how can we still use AI to assist us in this process? Well, if we come back into Bullhorn itself, you can actually get a screening score that's sent onto that submission for these particular people that can be done by that screening agent. Now, I've just gone into a list of different shortlists that we've had different screening agents going on. And for instance, if I want to have a look at Linda here, I can pop open her candidate record, and it's left a note in here to tell me what happened in that screening. What did Linda say? And also, what does the AI think is a good score for Linda in this case? Now, it's up to you. You could make this a little bit more automatic and do something like, if the screening agent gives them a score of above 80, then, well, maybe they go on to the next stage in the submission workflow. Maybe they then go into an actual human interview. And so you have these people sort of drip feeding through. A lot of the people that really weren't relevant for the role in the first place, the AI will ascertain that, give them probably a poorer score, and then you're going to get those people coming through into that interview stage. And of course, if you want to do this automatically, you could then even say anyone above an 80 score, go book some time in the calendar of that candidate owner. And so if I'm the candidate, my candidate experience is I've just gone through that screening and I've received an email which links me to this calendar link, right? So if we use Paul, the example before, could look something like this. Hey, great, fantastic. You've got to the next stage of the screening here. Maybe you want to book some time with a consultant. And so that could then, of course, go to that consultant's calendar. Again, though, each of these stages, it is up to you how much automation, how much AI you want to put towards this. It might be the case that you would prefer to have people looking through that shortlist and as a human sort of interpreting, okay, was this really a score worth 85 or 70 or whatever it is from the screening agent? And then you make the judgment call, do I want to push them further or not? But suffice to say, it can be all automated if you want to make it that way. Of course, at the end of the day, this is then getting to that human interaction point. So where we want to get to is automate as much as we can, get to that sort of final or more final interview stages where you do want a human to have that interview. You do want to have a human make that final judgment call, of course, to get that person into the potential placement. sorry, not potential placement, potentially put them forward towards the client themselves. So if I go back into the job then, and let's say those people that I did shortlist, I've got those people in there, and I want to start to submit them on to the VMS submittal. So I can of course do that from this screen. Now this is a little bit different in here in terms of talking about automation and AI. We're talking now back to the VMS side of things. So when I go into my actions button up here, I have a submit to VMS button here. Now again, this is only for certain VMS portals which will have the submittal function on it. If yours is, if you use one of them that do, you can select that submit to VMS, and then from there we can start to look, going back into sort of that VMS world and going back to talking about what Leanne was mentioning at the beginning. So if I put in using Paul for this whole example, so let's use him again. I'm going to create this VMS submittal, and just like Leanne mentioned before, we can now look at, okay, so Paul's been submitted previously, and he's filled out details for him before. So why don't we just create that from last submission? In this case, though, just to give you an example of something else, we can start from scratch here. And I can, of course, start to put in this person's details. If you haven't seen the VMS submittal before, I will just call out as well. It has the function at the top to give you quick insight, this binocular slide outs, to remind you about, okay, what was the company? What was the job again? What was the candidate? What's details on the candidate? What happened on their notes, these sorts of things, what's their CV. So you can come back in here and refresh yourself as you're filling these sorts of items out. But one thing, if I scroll down, which you probably wouldn't have seen, is now the ability to actually push data into one of these areas. And in this case, we're saying we're going to summarize this candidate, and here's information about the candidate summary. Now, where did this come from? Well, this was on the general comments field of the candidate. So when I create this VMS submittal, it can populate here. How did I get it into the VMS submittal without clicking anything else? Well, if you recall the screen that Leanne had before, if we go back into VMS Sync Admin, what I did was for the notes in VMS submittal, I said, pull this from general candidate comments and call it candidate summary, meaning that in the candidate in Bullhorn, if you have something in that general comments, now if you map this, it's going to go into those notes in VMS submittal when you click that. But take another step back. Well, how did the general comments get there? Did someone have to go and write it out? Well, not necessarily, because again, AI assistant, if we go to a candidate record, could do things like summarize this person's profile. And as I mentioned before, automation can now play ball with AI assistant. So you can tell automation to do something like, hey, when this person's maybe shortlisted, or maybe even when they just hit the system, I want you to summarize their CV, their skills, other elements on there, and I want you to push that into the general comments field. So it might be something like this, right? Maybe when the candidates are screened or when they're shortlisted, there's a step for AI assistant and automation, summarize the profile and pop it in the general comments field. Now, that was a lot of steps that I've just mentioned, but again, the end result is click VMS submittal. Even if you have to start from scratch, cool, you're going to have a blurb of a candidate summary in there ready to go, generated by AI and already pushed in there by the VMS submittal, the admin section.
And the great thing about the AI assistant prompt builder, like let's say you guys know your customers, you know what they expect on these types of blurbs that go back on the VMS submission to summarize the candidate for them when they're reviewing client submissions in the VMS tool. You can make that prompt as specific to the candidate's expected experience as possible. So labeling it, VMS profile summary for X client. So that way your recruitment team knows, hey, when we're submitting to this specific client back to the VMS, we need to use this prompt because it's already set up in the style that the client expects it each time. So it's another great use case for you guys to think about there.
Yeah, absolutely. And to tie all of this perhaps together as well, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you do have the analytics module with Bullhorn as well, keeping in mind that if I jump into analytics, you can specify down on VMS jobs too. So this is, we're not talking about automation or AI just at this second and now, but this is more about, hey, if a VMS job comes in, we want to maybe drill down on certain elements of it and say, okay, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to put ratios on this? Do we want to say average time to fill, maybe even versus other roles? And again, if you have this analytics, you can always dial in and actually click on these and see, okay, there's 113 VMS jobs added. What does that look like, for instance? And maybe hyperlink through into them if you need to. So yeah, if you have an analytics module as well, this can be quite powerful too.
Yeah, and it's a great way to prepare for those scorecard review calls, right? So you guys can kind of see everything that's going on in your platform and be prepared for when it's time for those quarterly or biannually reviews with the VMS program. So
Absolutely.
cool.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the parts that I wanted to go through today.